Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 113. You know, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying, like, I was just telling them about, like, my channel and stuff. We were talking a little bit of shop, and they were saying, you know, I tried to do a podcast with some of my friends, and they didn't show, because they were going to do like a live podcast. He goes, yeah, they didn't show up, so I just like ended it, and it was kind of lame and pretty cringe, because there were actually people who tuned in, and I was like, oh, you couldn't have just done it solo? And he's like, what? Who wants to listen to a one-person podcast? I was like, oh, oh no. I was just listening to, okay, so the other day I made this god-awful on the side channel, the Cellar Plus R. I made this god-awful series of videos of where I eventually ranked every single Mortal Kombat character design from every game, except for like some of the spin-offs and stuff, because I can't be bothered. Excuse me. So, those took really long. The final one, where I did every single character design, the first two was just the male and then the female ninjas, and then I was like, fuck it, I have to do all of them. I have to do all of them now, or else I can't get sleep. That video is like 4.5 hours long, so that took a really long time to render, partially because it kept crashing. It kept crashing halfway through the render, and it's not a complicated timeline either. There's like no fancy effects. It's just video and then the picture of the design I'm talking about. But for some reason, it kept crashing over and over, despite the fact that I make pretty long podcasts that I export without any trouble. But this, oh no. So I had to like split it up into two. I had to split it into two videos, and then render those videos out, and then combine them, and then render that out, and that fixed it. So it had to have been some kind of like, there's too many cuts, or there's too many things, or something like that, and it just freaked out Premiere, something along those lines. Anyway, that took a really long time. Also, in the middle of uploading it, I was like, I'm a real paranoid about storage space, so I have these, 3 multi-hour long videos just sitting in my folder for all of my finished videos. And I was thinking, oh man, it's taking up a lot of space. I should delete those. And completely, I wasn't even particularly delirious. It was maybe like midnight, something like that. I'd been up like the entire day trying to get it to work. And then I accidentally deleted the video I was uploading in the middle of it uploading, and I felt like, and because it was so big, it didn't go to the recycling bin. It just immediately got deleted, because it's like an over 10 gigs or something like that. And I was so mad at myself. I was so upset. Like, I started up, I had to redo the entire process over again. I didn't get it even started uploading until like 4 a.m. because the whole process took so goddamn long. Anyway, during this whole saga of me trying to get this video uploaded, it was just a lot of waiting. That was what sucked about it. It was a lot of waiting for things to happen. I was listening to some music, and I decided to, I don't know, I was in the mood for like spooky atmospheric music. I listened to some Silent Hill stuff. I listened to some of the Blood soundtrack, and a more obscure favorite of mine, the Bram Stoker's Dracula for Genesis OST, which you might remember if you watched that video that I made on all the versions of Bram Stoker's Dracula, all the video game ports of that movie. That doesn't really make sense. All the video game adaptations of that movie, because there's like 9 or something that I made something like 2 years ago, and the Genesis port has really good music. So the intro section of that game it's like the every stage it's like you're flipping through the book, right? So the transitions are turning the pages, and the it's called the Vampire Book. So the Vampire Book song is just, oh, it's so good. I go look it up right now. The Sega Genesis Bram Stoker's Dracula Vampire Book song. It's such a good song, and I discovered it obviously because I made a video on the game. But I looked into the comments, and I found some people saying, "Oh, this is such a great sample." You know, I totally see talking about sample for some song, and I'm like, well, where did this of all things get sampled? Turns out, I have to be in like the 1% of people who've listened to that song who did not come from the sample, who came from the actual game, because it was sampled in the xxxtentacion song "Run Up on Me." So I was just listening to that just now because I was reminded of it, and it's been a long time since I've listened to any of his music. I was never really like a fan of X, but obviously, I mean, it was so hard to avoid him in the time that he was active and, you know, alive and stuff. Just like he would just show up in edits, and you just hear his music was so, he had such a huge impact on popular culture for the time that he was making music. Like, I remember, I mean, you still see like memes, you know, where they'll make like half of his face. It'll be like half his face and then half, I don't know, like Trump's mugshot or something like that. And you'll still see that, or like Queen Elizabeth. You'll still see that, like, he completely changed, like, almost like created an interest in, like, a broader interest in, like, SoundCloud music, I want to say. At least from my perspective. Like, that's when I first really started hearing people talk about SoundCloud rap and stuff. Totally different sound and hip-hop and rap. And it's so funny that, like, it only happened, like, you know, maybe, oh god, that was like 7 or 8 years ago. Well, anyway, I hadn't listened to one of his pieces in a long time, and I was really taken aback by, you know, I'm not a hip hop listener, not really. I wouldn't say that in it with any seriousness. I've listened to hip hop. There's some. I have the whitest music palette, you know. I like New Jabez. So I can't say that I've listened to anything particularly inspired by xxxtentacion, as they say in France. But man, it still sounds really unique. It is crazy how the song itself. I know he's got some more like quieter, more kind of mellow songs, but man, a lot of his music just, it's like the song is tearing itself apart. It's the distortion, the bass is so fucking like cranked up that, like, stylistically, right? It's intended to sound incredibly abrasive. Like your speakers are gonna like rip up. The drivers are gonna get fucked up just playing it. And I was like, God, this is, it's cool. It's very intense. It's a cool style. I remember how much. Yeah, I think it's the. No, I'm not gonna make that joke. No, I'll say it's the domestic violence. That's what adds the flavor to the music. It's the like, oh, this guy, what did he do? Didn't he like lock his girlfriend in a hotel room or something? He totally did something like that. He like held her hostage or something. He definitely killed people. I remember, when did he die? He died in 2018. I remember he died in 2018 because it was one of the worst years in my life. You know, on the lower end. Right next to 1532 BC when the supervolcano erupted. And so I remember a lot of things that just happened during that year because just, I remember I did a thing during that year because it's part of some larger chain of memories, like Kingdom Hearts style. And I remember specifically where I was when I found when the news came out that he died. I was at this was the year that this was the summer that I went to 3 campouts, 3 week-long campouts, basically back to back. And one of those, I forget what the order, was National Youth Leadership Training. National Youth Leadership Training is a thing you got to do in Boy Scouts if you want to run for Senior Patrol Leader, which is the highest leadership rank in Scouts. So it's kind of like, I want it to be SPL because I'm a real go-getter. So it was just a natural thing. You had to go to NYLT. And it's a week-long thing where you and people from a bunch of other troops show up. You're split up into groups with, they always arrange it so that if there's multiple people from the same troop, they're always separated. And then you spend a week with those people camping and doing things and going to seminars about leadership techniques, and it's fucking useless. It is the least applicable leadership information you could ever get. Absolute waste of time. And on top of that, I had a terrible week there because the people that I was grouped with were like, I was 16 and the next oldest person was like 13. So it was rough. There was like 12-year-olds there, and I'm like, you're not a fucking SPL. Oh my god. Yeah, just like you're around 13-year-olds who've just learned how to swear, and they think it's the coolest thing ever. At least I was around those people. They think it's the coolest, funniest thing ever, and they're talking about Family Guy Funny Moments compilation 53. And it's that for an entire week, and I cannot get the fuck away from these people. It was brutal. Well, anyway, during that, I remember there was people, I think you weren't supposed to have your phone. Could you have your phone? I don't remember if they took them away. I don't think they did, actually. But while we were there, it was, the news came out that xxxtentacion had died. And in the morning, what we'd do is we'd all line up, or all the different groups would assemble at basically a central meeting area, and we'd go through the morning announcements and the rituals. And part of that was you had to come up with a new call each day. So you had to announce your group, right? And you'd have to come up with some kind of a chant or something like that. And one of the groups, I think we were split up into different. We were labeled by country for some reason. So we were the France group, and I believe Russia, the Russia group, was what they were called. I don't know who picked the country names. They were like, I remember they were talking to one of the counselors, and they were like, we want to do something in honor of xxxtentacion. And the counselors kind of talked amongst themselves for a second, and they these people are college students, maybe, the counselors, and they come back with the guy comes back with, well, you're totally free to do something at your own campsite on your own time, but not everyone here may have agreed with the language or or his actions as a person. So we'd asked for you to not do that. You should not, maybe not here. And they said, okay. And then it got to them, and they just said, they all said in unison, a moment of silence for xxxtentacion. And then everyone stood around awkwardly. for like 10 seconds, and they just, all right, Zimbabwe. So that's my vivid memory of X's passing. Mega Man X specifically. Mega Man xxxtentacion. Someone has to have made that, right? A meme of that. Anyway, we're gonna get on to the podcast. We got no comments from last time, but I will talk about how I'm a little tired. I'm a little underslept today, and the reason for that is because I stayed up until like 4 a.m. last night because like 2 days ago I said, you know what? You know what would be fun to mess around with? MUGEN. You know what? That would be fun. So technically I'm not using MUGEN, I'm using xxxtentacion, which is just like a port, no, not a port, like a fork of MUGEN. It's what Idle Showdown was made in, that HoloLive fighting game. So I'm messing around with that, but everything's like basically cross-compatible. So I've been messing around with that, and specifically in order to even get to the point where I can implement something into MUGEN. If no one knows, it's basically, when I say MUGEN, I'm just using a catch-all term for that and all of its forks. It's I guess I'd call it a fighting game engine, where you can take assets and codes and scripts and all the necessary things for a character and stages and all that stuff, everything you need for a fighting game, and it's made for that. You can import it into that, and the right file types and the formats and all that. You got to get that right, but that's what it is. So I've had this on the Mortal Kombat topic. I've had this thing in the back of my head where I really wish there was a Mortal Kombat game that just played like Chaos Code, because I just really like the way that Chaos Code is laid out. I think it's like a really cool cross between almost like a KOF SNK style of fighter and a more anime style fighter. And I just think I was like, man, I really like this format. I'd like to apply it to a different game. So when I say format, I just mean like I really like how the button, like the layout, like the control scheme, the whole combat system, maybe not all the mechanics exactly, but I really enjoy the way that it's laid out. It feels like a nice middle ground between like accessibility, like not having like 6 buttons, you just got 4, but you have like some close normals and everything chains together, and it feels very intuitive. That's what I noticed with Chaos Code. Everything feels really intuitive. And generally, like, stuff kind of works the way that you want it to, for lack of a better word. Like, things just kind of combo together in a very logical way. So I like that, and I was like, what if I had that? So I went to Mortal Kombat Warehouse and I downloaded all the Scorpion sprites from UMK3, because that's the easiest. And I was like, all right, how do I make this into a character? And you got to do that with a little program called Fighter Factory. And so mostly this has been, when they say I'm learning how to use MUGEN, I'm really learning how to use Fighter Factory and all that shit. And then like use the coding and all that. So right now I'm at the point where I figured out like basically how to add, like I know how to add sprites, I can add animations, I can add and edit hitboxes and the hurt boxes and all that. And that stuff is really fun. I actually really like the creative aspect of putting together an animation with a couple different different frames of animation and how long they're going to last. And then deciding frame data and the hitboxes and hurt boxes and drawing those in. I really enjoy that. That's weirdly a very fun process. It's like kind of making actual balancing decisions and like how should the game be designed kind of way is neat. I've never really done that before because I've never done any kind of video game, like actually, like, you don't always come up with things in your head, right? You can always come up with things in your head for what you'd want a game to be. I have like tons of old docs and like concepts for how I would lay out a game of a specific whatever, But actually doing it is very enjoyable. I've hit a roadblock, and the roadblock is I need to make my process more efficient. So here's the problem. So in order to make a sprite work in the program, you have to have if you've ever looked at a sprite sheet, it's always on like the sprites, and they're always on like a solid color background. That's because that background is the transparency layer, which is basically going to be, it's a color that isn't anywhere in the sprite itself, and that is essentially what the program reads as being transparent. That's what it's going to cut out. If it's just like a regular transparency layer, like it's with like the checkerboard, like that kind of a if it's not like the solid color thing, then it doesn't work. It has to be an actual like transparency layer, so an actual colored layer that the game is then going to remove. It's going to automatically remove that. In order to do that, it involves, okay, so I get the PNGs of these scorpion sprites, right? And those are on transparent backgrounds. So I need to make them have a solid color background. In order to do that, I downloaded them they're in an indexed color format or color mode, whatever the heck. You have to change. That means that it has a palette. You have to change that to RGB so that you can use colors outside of the palette, which you need for this. So in order to change something to RGB, well, I just do that in GIMP. I'm a GIMP boy. Oh, actually, wait, no, I can't. That's not. I don't mean it like that. I just meant that I make all my stuff in GIMP. Fuck. I didn't even mean to say. I didn't even mean to say that. So you gotta convert it. Basically the workflow goes: import the PNG into GIMP, change it into RGB, make a new layer that's with the foreground color, which I've just made cyan because it's nowhere in the sprite. Move the foreground layer down so that it's beneath Scorpion, and it's on the background. And then you have to flatten the image, otherwise it cannot be converted back into an indexed color format. You needed an indexed for it to have a palette so that the game can read the palette. That's how it works. So then you do that, and then you have to manually click and drag the cyan color in the palette to the very front, the very first position, because that is always the one that the game reads as the transparency layer. So, and then you export that. So this is like a kind of tedious process, especially because there's no hotkeys for really any of this. You can sort of speed things up with like a couple, hold down shift and then click on the new layer button to like use the same settings as last time. You can kind of expedite things a little bit like that, but overall it's a very tedious process. So I was like, you know what? GIMP has scripting capabilities. Why don't I dip my toes into that? That's right. I got a hashtag learn to code. So I spent yesterday giving myself like a crash course in Python, which is what GIMP uses, and writing a lot of iterations of a script to basically do all of these processes for me. I am currently at the point where I can get the process to show up as like a button that I can click in GIMP. However, the function I think it's getting bottlenecked at the function where it adds a new layer, because for some reason that is just not working. It's not working, and the rest of the script does not execute. So I have to figure that out. I spent so long just trying to get it to actually appear, like trying to figure out the actual format in the script that I have to like write it out as to actually make it like appear in the main menu at all, to be able to click on. So that's where I'm at. And it was like, I don't know, it was interesting. I've never been a coder, right? I've always, you know, when I was younger, I was like, oh, I want to get into game design. And then I tried coding and I was like, I don't like this. But this at least, you know, years later, years after the fact, has, it's not like I'm not gonna learn how to code. I'm gonna learn how to code enough that I can perform the very specific things that I want to, which is how it starts, and I know that. My coding abilities will be limited to writing fighting game characters and GIMP scripts, and that's gonna be it. So I literally, like, if I go over to my my first desktop where all my, you know, I don't do any work, quote unquote, related stuff. It's just full of like Notepad ++ windows and fucking, I have all these tabs open for troubleshooting. I'm just like, okay, what's an example thing that I can steal from to see if that works, and I can just copy what they did. But it's been an interesting experience. I think I enjoy it. I think I do like it. It captures me. It's something that I can really sink my teeth into. And I explained all of this to Kat, and she goes, "Is this like the next video that you're doing? There's a lot of effort." And I was like, "No, I'm just a really big nerd. There's nothing else. There's nothing useful or practical about this. I'm just really, really into this idea. And I'm obsessed with it right now." Let's see, what else have I done? I finally pulled the trigger. I went down to the store. I went down to my local game store, and I bought some 40K miniatures and paint supplies. That's right, everybody. I did it. So I was like, you know what? I got a little bit of cash from like a relative recently, and I was like, you know, I should do it. And I noticed, because the first time I visited the store, I actually joined their Discord, and they made an announcement saying, "Hey, it's our 10-year anniversary on this day." And I was like, you know what? If they're gonna have a discount on any day, it would be their anniversary. So I walked all the way down there, backpack on back, you know, and backed. And looked at the store. It was decently busy, and then when there was a free moment, I asked the lady behind the counter if she could help me, because there were some models, there were some miniatures that I liked, but not the specific. I liked the price point and like the size, like the amount of minis, but I didn't really like the specific ones. I wanted to paint some Space Marines. And so she did a lot to help me. They actually sold an introductory like set for 40K, which I kind of assumed was more of a game thing, but honestly, when I look at the value, it's more of a painting thing, to be honest. I don't know. I've heard a little bit about like the intro sets for that Games Workshop offers, and in terms of starting an army, like a full-sized army, it's not amazing. It doesn't really get you everything you need in the slightest. But if you just care about painting like me, wow, that's actually pretty good value. So I ended up picking it up for like $55 with the discount. It's only like $60 base before tax. So I ended up picking it for like $55 or something like that. $55.40, something like $55.45, something like that. And plus tax. And then some extra paints for the specific color scheme that I wanted. And I only ended up paying like $80 all told, and I was pleasantly surprised. Of course, that's with some discounts on some of the paints in the box and all that. But honestly, I mean, if you take out the discounts, it was maybe $90-$100 for. I don't foresee myself running out of these paints for a while. I don't foresee myself finishing all these miniatures for a while, and because I'm looking at it as just like a painting project, because I want to check out painting. That's actually a pretty great value for the amount of stuff that I got. What is Cat DMing me right now? A single period. She deleted it. Okay, maybe that was maybe that was an accident. So I have not started that yet. Mostly because I'm waiting. Actually, I need to pick up some more paintbrushes. So the box comes with one paintbrush, which is enough for the way that they instruct you to paint them, but that's not how I want to paint them. It doesn't come with a primer, which could be a problem for some people. So if you don't know anything about painting miniatures, the minis come in these gray plastic casts, and generally when you start painting them, you want to first prime them, which is like a thick layer of this paint, which is either you usually see like an aerosol can, like a spray can version of it. There's also brush on primer, and that kind of like it's weird to describe if you've never like seen a comparison, but the color that something is primed in, it kind of it influences all of the layers on top to an extent, and it looks really cool. You can end up with two models with painted, the exact same way, but one uses like say a white primer and the other uses like a black, and they have very different looks, and they can have very different feels visually. So I really like the way the black primer looks on a lot of miniatures, so I wanted to pick some of that up. That was like by itself at like $10, but that shit lasts like a long time from what I can tell. Also, I had to get a brush on primer because they did not have in stock any black spray primers. I'm actually okay with that one because apparently it's more value for there's more paint in there. It just lasts longer. You'll get more out of it. But there's a couple of drawbacks. The main comparison is that with a spray primer, you can spray like however you can spray a bunch of models at once and get them all primed at the same time. It generally dries pretty fast. Very, very convenient if you're doing a large quantity of miniatures and you just want to get them primed, because it's not like a delicate process where I'm going to go in and I'm going to make no, you're just hosing them down, basically trying to get like an even coat, but that's pretty much it. With the drawback of the spray primers is that there are restrictions on when and where you can use them. So number one, it's paint fumes, so you kind of have to do it outside or in like a ventilated like painter's room, which most casual people probably don't have. And that being said, because you're doing it outside and you're applying it outside and you might have to let it dry outside, environmental conditions can just make it like not viable. If it's like snowing or if like if it's like really humid out, that can like really mess with it. Brush on primer, you have to do, obviously the drawback is that you have to do it one at a time and you have to do it by hand. But you can use it basically anytime, anywhere. So all the restrictions on that are gone. So I've got that sitting in the back. What I need is, because it's a brush on, I need a bigger brush to actually. So the one that comes with the box is just that the introductory set comes with is just like a thin point painting brush, but that would take really long. That would take really long and be really arduous and probably mess up the brush a lot if I used all the primer. If I used that for all the primer. So you kind of, I looked up some videos on what's advised, and it's generally advised to go with the wider kind of like mop brushes, you know, the ones that just kind of like all the bristles just all splay out everywhere. They're like kind of like a thin just I can't describe it in a shape, just a sound effect. So I'm gonna try to pick one. I found out like a Michaels, you can pick up a pack of like 25 assorted brushes for like $6. It's like, sure, sounds great, and they're probably gonna be like really cheap, crappy brushes, but like that doesn't really matter. It's not. I'm not painting the Mona Lisa here. I'm painting a space marine. So I'm pretty excited for that. It'll probably be a multi. It'll take a while, I imagine, but it seems like a fun hobby thing. Painting just seems so cool to me. I was watching like all these painting videos for Warhammer miniatures, and I was like, "Fuck, this looks so much fun. This looks like so much fun." Like I've never been that into painting or drawing as like a creative, like visual mediums like that for creative outlets. But maybe this will get me into painting. Yeah, like I mean, I don't know. You know, it'd be fun. You know what's fun is like making. I've had this idea of like painting up miniatures for like friends and stuff and giving them as gifts. Like I've always struggled to find like ways to use, because if you're like an artist or someone, or you can like draw someone like a picture for their birthday or something like that, and that's always like, oh wow, you used your creative hobby, your creative thing, like area, your spec to make a gift. And that's never been easy for me, because the stuff that I've always excelled at has been like writing, and like, well, I guess I could write you like a poem or something. I don't know. Or like, I'm not really gonna like edit a video for my girlfriend's birthday. Like, what a yeah. So that sounds, I don't know, a lot of appealing things about that. Hey, speaking, I guess we should get into actual like news stuff. Ew, news? Ew, gross. Gamescom, wait, the Gamecom, is it con or com? I'm having a Gamescom. It is com. That stands for the Gamescomvention. It happened a little while ago, like this past week, and there's been a ton of news, and most of it I don't care about. I didn't watch it. It came as a surprise to me. Excuse me. Because I'm pretty sure all that news dropped in the window where I was spending like 4 days trying to get this stupid fucking Mortal Kombat tier list video up. There was a little bit of Mortal Kombat news. Am I thinking of anything? Nah, nothing that really interested me that much. The new Shao Kahn looks good. Sorry, General Shao. But also, and kind of what really tipped me off to the Gamescom even happening, because I was in such a bubble for those few days, new Space Marine 2 footage, and a decent amount of it. So Gamescom, big place to show off games, stuff that's generally already in production, which is really neat. E3 always banked on the big announcements, and that has kind of gone the way of the dodo. I think Gamescom focuses more on, it's a press event. There might be some amount of it that's open to the public. It's like a press event, and it's mainly for things that are showing off things that have already been announced, that, oh, you want to see more footage of it? You want to see more footage of Space Marine 2? Yes, I would like to see some, because we've gotten so little. We know that it exists, and there's Tyranids. So the new footage is... It's not great. Okay. So I don't know who recorded the footage. I don't think it was IGN. I was tempted to blame this on IGN, because they did a similar thing when Bolt Gun came out. And I remember when IGN put out like 7 minutes of Bolt Gun gameplay, and the game looked bad. They made the game look really bad. It looks sluggish and weird and choppy. Not performance-wise, but gameplay-wise. I was like, ooh. And then I played it, and no, the game actually plays really well. It's just that it becomes incredibly repetitive after the halfway point. This, I fear, is a similar situation. I hope it's a similar situation, actually, because the footage is kind of boring and uneventful. Yeah, uneventful. So, one thing you gotta know is, so what are my expectations going to Space Marine 2? I'm expecting it to be stylistically, at least in a lot of ways, stylistically a successor to the original game. Space Marine is it's an extremely linear 7th gen third-person shooter. It's a very pretty Warhammer themed roller coaster. That's the best way I can describe it. I'm expecting, Space Marine 2 to be very linear, very like you're shuttled down a very pretty looking hallway, a very extravagant looking hallway, and you're going to do a lot of things, and it's going to be like 8 hours. It's going to be like 8, maybe 10 hours. It's going to be short. All I want it to be is short and sweet, and with some solid gameplay, and let me walk around cool 40K locations. So there's a couple things that I really like about this gameplay that I'll go into first. So number one, the Tyranids have been given their zombies. Well, so they're not zombies. Okay. So the producer or developer of it, is... Why do I keep thinking it's Relic? It's not Relic. It's not Relic. It's Saber. It's Saber Interactive. Saber Interactive is known for the World War Z game. Not really. I forgot that was game. But they made the 2019 World War Z game, which had, I guess, some kind of engine tools built for it, where they, to control like the zombie horde AI, just these big, massive zombie hordes. Man, this game looks generic. Someone in the comments is going to tell me it's actually a hidden gem. They've taken that same engine that they used for the zombie hordes, and they've applied it to the Tyranids as a base, as a very base for the AI. And it's a great choice. The Tyranids are the premier swarming army of 40K. I guess besides the guard, but I mean the Tyranids really are like, they're a swarm of bugs. They're the Zerg. Well, they're what the Zerg was. The Zerg ripped the Tyranids off. The Tyranids are like the swarm, rush you down faction race in 40K. And having them act like this gigantic horde, like there's some great shots where you see them all like climbing up a ravine, and they're all climbing on top of each other and skittering up, and it's like the flow of the bodies is great, like water. Portions, there's scenes where they look up and there's all these winged Tyranids flying around, and the swarm, and it looks awesome. It looks great. It looks like actual animals hunting in a pack, but just magnified to like a ridiculous scope. And 40K is about excess. So that is really, really cool. I like the fact that there is... So the one of the ways the Tyranids have worked, at least for the longest time on the tabletop, is that they are a swarming army, but within a unit is always a collection of models, of little individual pieces in 40K. It's not an individual piece itself. Units are made up of models or pieces or miniatures, whatever you want to call them. So within a Tyranid unit, they'll usually have what is called they'll have all the little like swarmers, but there will be kind of like a leader unit within them. And the leader unit has like a trait called like synapse, is what it's usually been called. And synapse essentially links them to the the swarm that they're around. So the Tyranids they're a big hive mind, but they need these bigger leader units to act as nodes to help command and regulate the overall swarm and flow of the hive mind. And if you kill on the tabletop, if you kill that synapse leader unit within the group, you will. Well, it's always some kind of. It usually incurs some kind of big penalty to that group. It's like, oh, they'll. Now I have to mute another Discord server because it's distracting me. You have to some kind of big penalty. Either like the morale will drop, which means that the members of the unit can just like desert and flee, or they have a higher chance to. So you'll just get like I think in 10th edition it might work. I don't know how Tyranids work in 10th edition, but because 10th edition had some changes to the morale and all that. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the tabletop game. I just know the broad strokes. That's generally how it works, and that's been translated into this game with basically these segments where there's a big, just all these little swarming Tyranid like termagants, and they're just flooding the battlefield, and there'll be these bigger units whose names I forget, the Rippers, I want to say. And those are sort of like the bigger, taller units, and you can, if you make your way through the pack to the Rippers, you can have like you can kind of aggro them into this one-on-one fight, and then if you kill them, and that fight, it seems like it uses a lot more of the mechanics. Dodging, there's parrying, there's like, if you get like a success, it's like if you get a successful dodge or parry, I forgot exactly what, you get like a quick draw pistol shot against them, which is pretty cool looking. And then if you kill them, it sends out kind of like a psychic shock that kills some of the like termagants and little swarmer units around them. So it's like taking out. You got to get through the big pack to the synapse leader guy, the big elite enemy, and then if you manage to kill them, then that kind of thins the pack out a bit, which is an interesting dynamic to have for combat scenarios. And I imagine, so part of like the Tyranids' MO is that they're all about biomass and being a hive mind and constant rapid evolution. So because they're a hive mind, if one Tyranid dies, its memories are not lost with it. It's all held within the collective. So once a group of them is done, they'll return to the, like, oh god, I forget what they're called. They return. They have these giant. They're ships. They aren't really ships because again they're basically just these big organisms, like these big squids, and they get into the orbit of a planet and shoot parts of it down, and then those like crash land and then spawn out, birth out like the actual Tyranids. The little individual ones. So they go back to that like spawning hub nest hive thing, and then they assimilate back into it, and then all of their memories and the combat and all that is kind of fed in, and then it spits out a new generation of Tyranids, and this is all happening at like a rapid rate, like over the course of days and weeks. And the new ones have new evolutions to adapt, basically to adapt better to the specific methods that have killed the previous generations. So I imagine over the course of the game, assuming the Tyranids stay the main villains, which I doubt, but it would be neat. It would be neat to just have a Warhammer story where the Tyranids get to, they aren't just like, here's the initial threat, and then, oh, it was chaos. Chaos was behind it all. Or Chaos is like Emperor Palpatine. Palpatine's behind it all. I imagine over the course of the game, they will introduce new Tyranid variants and new Tyranid enemies based off of Maybe it's, I doubt it's going to be adaptive to the actual things the player is doing. More so just, hey, here's the reason why there's new forms of Tyranids that are showing up that you weren't seeing before. It's because that's the new generation, and I'm willing to bet you it's going to be oh hey, a brand new Tyranid, just like the new Tyranids introduced in the brand spanking new 10th edition Tyranid line. With their shiny new models that you can buy now from Games Workshop. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of marketing tie-in, but hey, I think the new Tyranids actually look pretty cool. The new miniatures do. So, that stuff is great. That stuff is really cool. I think that stuff's interesting. The new Kombat has a lot of ideas that I've heard it described by a couple different outlets, and they were all very okay. Here's why I have a little faith. Here's why I have faith that this is a bolt gun situation. Is that all of them described very good things about the combat and how fun it was, and you know, it's pretty simple and straightforward, but the satisfying, some cool little nifty stuff thrown in, like the dodging and the parrying, and some stuff just to test timing. So that is encouraging. The atmosphere is great. It's a beautiful looking game. Just the effects on the mud, the particles, the lighting effects. Just the sheer amount of bodies that are on screen, moving and doing stuff. The battlefield ambience is great. It's so cool. And this is where we get into why the gameplay that they showed off was bad. It's bad because it looks boring. The game looks boring. It seems like, having played the original, it feels like if you took the original and played it in the least interesting way possible, in the slowest, least interesting way possible, and also edited the footage together in the most blue-balling way you ever could. I swear to God, every single time any kind of action starts up in this gameplay footage, this gameplay quote-unquote footage, it just starts cutting. They get like a few shots in. Oh, they kill 2 Tyranids. Hey, we're going to cut to the next scene. I'm like, no, show me that stuff. Show me what the combat encounters are like. That's what the game is about. Space Marine, the original Space Marine, was a series of arenas that were split up by little walking segments for breathing time. That's the whole game. That's what was fun about it. It's that it was this fast-paced, very direct, shoot you through a funnel kind of experience. They're just showing me the funnel. Or they're just showing me the little in-between bits, which look nice, you know? But man, they are really stopping to look around and pan the camera and stay, and they are not running. There's a run button in this game, and they're not using it. They're walking, and they're doing everything very slowly, and they're playing very methodically. I'm like, you are not selling this game. You are selling this game very poorly. And I want to have faith. I want to have faith that it will actually be cool and fun and pretty fast-paced and visceral like the original game. And just, some dumb fun like that one. The footage is not inspiring, but the testimonies from the people... I believe that's dev footage. The testimonies from the actual people who played it are much more positive and don't really reflect the boring parts of the trailer. Or it wasn't trailer, it was footage. Unless that was journalist footage. I think someone called it journo gameplay, which is absolutely that's 100% right. That is journo gameplay. So that's yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it still comes out this year. It's weird that there hasn't been a whole lot of... It's weird that there's been so much silence on it. Maybe they just don't have a lot of opportunities to... Maybe they want to wait for these kind of bigger shows to release some gameplay or a trailer or something like that. But, Yeah, a lot of silence since this game was announced like a year or two ago. Um, I'm still excited. I'm still excited. I'm still looking for. I still plan on purchasing it. It just, yeah, it was like, man, I was really caught up. I'm like, man, this game does look really nice. Yeah, I don't trust the gameplay. I don't trust the gameplay they've shown off so far. But I look forward to it. Would I be really I don't know, man. Would I be disappointed if there was like some kind of twist, like it was actually chaos, which it always is. It always is. I mean, that was what Space Marine 1 was. It's, hey, there's this orc invasion of a hive world. It's a forge world specifically. Go stop it. Actually, the villain is chaos. It's a demon. There's a demon and chaos space marines, and yeah, it's neat. But it's like, all right, how many are we gonna do this in every 40K story? I wanted to be something crazy. I wanted to be like, what would be more interesting is like, yeah, it's the Tyranids, but actually, it's the Drukhari. That would be interesting. I'm like, shit, okay. Drukhari? Okay. It's interesting. They're the BDSM dark elves. And they're the most evil people in the entire galaxy, which is saying a lot for 40K. They're the most evil people. They're probably worse than the gods of hell in the 40K universe. That would be interesting, yeah. That'd be an interesting, like, enemy type. Yeah, so Space Marine 2 footage does not look good, but I have faith for the game. Hey, other things that I have faith in, I guess, if you want to, it's a weird segue. There is a, let me get my words right. Night Dive is remastering Star Wars Dark Forces. So Dark Forces, the Star Wars FPS that came out in the late 90s, I want to say. Considered by many to be a classic, which has unfortunately, I think it's obscure more for the fact that it lacks an easy way to play it on modern systems. It's on Steam, but you have to play it with, circa 1999 controls or whatever. Where, this wasn't exactly. Actually, when was it? What? I have to find out. I don't even think it was Wars Dark Forces. 99 is probably. Oh, it's 95. Jesus. So we are well pre-Quake. We are pre-Quake control schemes. So it's got that arrow keys to look left and right. You got to hold a button to strafe, page up and page down, or how you look up and down, and it's not how I want to play an FPS game. And it's been held back by the fact that, obviously those are classic FPS controls like Doom and stuff like that. The difference is that a lot of those other classic shooters all have source ports, or in the case of Blood, source recreation ports. Dark Forces does not. There isn't, so... Well, okay, it didn't for the longest time. I think I might have mentioned it on this podcast. There was a fan-made source port of the game, attempting to recreate the code and all that and the behaviors of everything. But for a modern system, modern options, modern control scheme defaults, much like you'd expect in any other shooter with a good source port. And what was it called? The Force Engine, I think is what they called it. So that was a fan-made thing that's been out for, I want to say, a few months at this point. And lo and behold, there is now an official source port that is going to be done by Night Dive. Night Dive, of course, have some experience with this, having made ports of... I don't believe it's a source port, but the System Shock Remastered Edition. They did Blood Fresh Supply, which is their own source port of Blood. Not my favorite. Not my favorite. I always prefer N Blood, but I think it's Blood Fresh Supply is worth playing. It's worth buying just so that you can play add-ons and mods for the game, namely Death Wish. I feel like this comes up every single time I talk about this source port. It's worth it to play Death Wish. Go try out Blood using my favorite is N Blood. GX, what is it? GX, yeah, GX Blood is, I think it's fine, but I just like the way N Blood feels a lot more. And then if you like that and you're like, wow, what if I had the original game, but there was a sequel, and the sequel was like fucking incredible and one of the best games I've ever played, then you'd have Death Wish. So Death Wish is really easy to set up in Fresh Supply. Actually, Fresh Supply was developed with Death Wish in mind to be compatible with it. So yeah, think of it as just buying Death Wish with the original game as a bonus. That being said, Fresh Supply, while not being my favorite way to play Blood, it feels a little weird, namely in like some odd kind of perspective thing that has some weird like visual warping when you look up or down too far that N Blood doesn't have, from what I can tell. But so that's like a little strange, but it's at least like very playable. And if the comparison being there's no official port of this game, much better. I much prefer that. So hopefully they can take some of the things that they learned from Fresh Supply, which was going to get, it came out rougher. It came out a lot rougher than it is now. And it got updated and patched up until Atari decided to stop giving them money for it. So they just kind of like, well, it's done. It's done. Hopefully, who owns Dark Force? It's got to be, it's actually, yeah, who owns it now? Who is it published by? It has to be even like Lucasfilm, right? It was developed by Lucasfilm, so it has to have been published by them. Well, LucasArts, you mean, developed and published by LucasArts. I guess LucasArts is still LucasArts is still, it is still like it's like a weird subsidiary thing now of one of those. Yeah, what are they considered now? Lucasfilm announced that it was reestablishing the Lucasfilm Games brand for all future gaming titles, though it would remain solely as a licensor of Lucasfilm properties. Huh. Okay, interesting. It's just a licensor now. Oh yeah, that Indiana Jones game by Machine Games. Does anyone remember that? So I guess they got the license from that to, I imagine it's owned by Lucasfilm Games, or that's where it's considered. Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be. So, hopefully they'll give them enough that if it comes out a little wonky, then we can get some patches to make it good. Maybe I should try out the Force Engine source port first, and then I can go check out the source port remake, which I imagine much like I imagine that it will just update the base game, unless it's a remaster. I hope so. I mean, that's what they did with Quake. I never played the Quake 2 remaster. Part of that is that I really don't want to replay Quake 2 because it's Quake 2. But I mean, hey, not having to play it in a source port would be cool. Just the single player is still extremely underwhelming. There is a new episode. I could try out the new episode. I should probably play that, which I believe is also developed by Machine Games. It's called like Realm of the Machine or something. And the remaster to bring it back up. When they did the Quake 1 remaster and they made a new episode, Dimension of the Machine, that's like peak Quake single player. Dimension of the Machine is so good in terms of like official expansions and all that. Dimension of the Machine is insanely good. Just like a delightful experience from start to finish. Hopefully the new expansion lives up to that too. But yeah, Dark Forces, that's cool. Night Dive on brand, but also on track to just remastering so many classic games. Do Outlaws next. Do that cowboy shooter, Outlaws. That's a little jank looking. That's why I haven't tried it out, because I'm like, this game looks cool, but man, it looks like it is kind of clunky to play. Hey, speaking of clunky, my segues are so great today, aren't they? Kat and I did not continue our Nickelodeon marathon. Did we? No, we didn't. I didn't get to see... Oh, yeah. There's no episode last week because... Consider last week's episode to be that stupid Mortal Kombat tier list. Because that's what I was doing during that time. And then once I was done with it, all I wanted to do was work on the actual next main channel video and not the podcast. So, consider that. I've like rambled on and on about parody and all that, and want to do 1 week, but fuck it. I'm in debt 1 episode. That's what it is. I'm in debt a single episode to you guys, and let's keep a running tally of my episode debt. We're at -1 right now. Anyway, I couldn't go to Kat's last week because she got the COVIDs, and so I just kind of stayed home and stared at the floor. But this last Friday, I managed to. She's okay now. She's quarantined. She's isolated. She's recovered. She's gone through the whole process, and she tested negative. So I'm like, great, time to go over and let's watch Spiderman Lotus. Spiderman Lotus. If you don't remember what this was, Spiderman Lotus is a fan film that had a lot of hype that was supposed to come out last year, I want to say. Something like that. At least over 6 months ago. And it ended up getting delayed because the lead actor and the director both had DMs leaked where they were just dropping hard R's left and right. They were just like raindrops. It's just dropping. So that inspired a large public drama, which resulted in the film being like, maybe we shouldn't release this right now. Because it was literally, I want to say 2 weeks from release or something like that. It was right before. And it was so much, I mean, it was the first I'd ever heard of it, because I don't pay attention to fan films. So my first exposure, and I imagine, honestly, probably most people's first exposure to this film, was this horrible PR. Just this absolutely horrible look. And this weird drama that followed about like, well, no, actually he's a good guy and he doesn't say the N-word anymore, except for when he said it in this text from 2 weeks ago. And just like, okay, so it gets pushed back, and we were going to watch it like 2-3 weeks ago because it was supposed to come out. It ended up getting delayed again because it wasn't done being edited. And I was like, what the... He put out like a community post on YouTube where it was being released. And the director was like, yeah, just last minute editing changes. And I'm like, what? It's supposed to come out tonight and you're just exporting it? What have you been doing for the last year? What? Did the film just get completely redone from scratch or something? I have no idea what the production history was like, besides the delay. But it eventually came out, and we wanted to watch it together, so we waited until we could both be together without fear of me catching the vids. So we watched it. It's like, God, how long is this thing? It's like, hang on, Spider-Man Lotus. It cost 125,000 USD, and it's like 2 hours. It's 2 hours long. Can you guys hear someone sawing in the background? I'm gonna close the window. I'm back from closing the window. It's 2 hours long, and it is probably how would I describe this? I will admit that I am not a fan film watcher, right? I am not a fan film enjoyer. I've never really delved into that area. The only thing I can think of is that horrible Sailor Moon fan film that I made Kat watch with me that's like 3 hours long. That was kind of boring and okay, but had some funny low budget stuff in it. This film could have been 40 minutes at most. It should have been 40 minutes at most. Okay, so here's what Spider-Man Lotus is about. Spider-Man Lotus is, I don't care about spoilers. It's Spider-Man Lotus. It is about Peter Parker, and so it's after Gwen Stacy dies. It's so hard to talk about what happens in the movie because fucking nothing happens in this movie. It takes place, the intro is like 30 fucking minutes long, and it's just setting up the fact that Gwen Stacy dies and everyone's really sad about it. That's the whole movie. That's actually the entire movie. Gwen Stacy dies, and then everyone's really sad about it. You think I'm joking or that I'm skipping over stuff? Let me tell you the things that happen in this movie. We begin with the one of two action scenes. It's not amazing. The special effects when Spider-Man is swinging around are actually pretty good. The lead actor who plays Spider-Man is trying to be quippy, but the quips are not good, and he is not carrying them. Everything is awesome. He's thinking of proposing to her. We're 20 minutes into the film. You think the inciting incident would happen? No. We're going to wait a little longer. Everything in this film this film needed another editing pass. They did not need to use all of that footage. It takes an absurdly long amount of time to get to the point where she actually dies. And then everyone's sad about it for an hour and a half. That's the entire plot of the movie. It is scene after scene after scene after scene after scene of this character's sad. Harry Osborn is doing drugs now. He's walking in New York and he's sad, and it's night. Here's another shot of him walking in New York and it's sad at night. Here's another shot of him walking and you're like, okay, this is, now we've established the tone of the scene, this scene of Harry and, walking around outside in the city. Now this is the point where we're 3 shots in, it's been almost a minute at least. Something's gonna change, right? Something's gonna happen in the scene. And another shot of Harry walking and being sad. And another shot of him walking and being sad. And everything goes on like this for 5 minutes. And nothing happens. Nothing happens. And then we cut to Spider-Man, and he's on a building and he's sad. Okay, and then I'm literally trying to... Okay, it's like that. It's... Peter is just a horrible, miserable asshole. He's a horrible, miserable asshole who is mad that Harry didn't come to Gwen Stacy's funeral because he was mourning the loss of his own father who also died. And he's so brutally unlikable in this film, which I think is intentional, but man, it's so much. It's so much. There is so little that is even sympathetic in the movie. There's so little like sympathy for the, like, underneath all of that. What does Mary Jane do? She goes to a party and she's sad. She talks to Flash Thompson, that's his name. I almost said Flash Gordon. And she's talking about how Gwen was we watched a lot of this movie on 2x speed. And you don't miss anything. We had the YouTube auto-generated captions on. You don't miss shit. Like, let me really slow down and analyze that. You don't need to. Here's the first thing that actually happens to move the plot forward at all. Spider-Man gets a letter from Mary Jane in the second scene of the film. Sorry, the third scene? I think it's the third scene, which happens like 30 minutes into the movie when he's at Gwen Stacy's grave. And it's a letter from, I don't know how she got this. I guess it's because people know that Peter knows Spider-Man, right? Like, oh, he's friends with Spider-Man. And she's a friend of Peter's, so somehow she got basically a request to do like a Make-A-Wish thing for I don't know why I'm laughing. For this like kid with a terminal illness who is not in a hospital. Despite having a terminal illness, he's not in a hospital. He's just like in a room. He's just at home in his room because I guess they couldn't get permits to shoot in a hospital. That scene where Spider-Man goes to the kid happens. So the scene where he gets the letter happens like 30 minutes into the movie. He doesn't show up to the kid's room until like the hour 20 mark. And the rest of the movie is him having this Make-A-Wish visit experience, and then it cuts sometimes to really, really long flashbacks of Peter fighting the Green Gobbler, and sometimes other characters doing things like being sad in a car or being sad at a party or something like that, and not really establishing anything other than they really liked Gwen and they're sad that she's dead now, over and over and over again. And eventually Peter is so this kid is like a Spider-Man super fan, right? He's got like his room is just splattered with Spider-Man memorabilia and posters. It's like a Spider-Man slaughterhouse. But instead of blood, it's like posters. Instead of giblets, it's figures and Spider-Man plug-and-play games. And Peter is kind of taken aback at how much this kid idolizes him because he's like, I'm not a hero because I failed and Gwen died. And this is the angst that is the entire movie, is that he feels responsible for her death because he couldn't save her, which is obviously a thing from the comics. I believe, hang on. So this came out of, Spider-Man Blue. Yeah, this was adapted from or inspired by two comics. One of them is called Spider-Man Blue, and the other was like the one where he visits the Make-A-Wish kid. Valentine's Day. I didn't actually. We're gonna do some on-the-spot research. Also, Loeb and Sale, written by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, also worked on Daredevil Yellow, Hulk Gray. Oh, that's the one where he's like Isn't isn't Hulk gray the one where he's like a bouncer at a club or something? And Captain America white. Interesting title. Also chronicle their respective Marvel Comics characters in their formative years. Okay. Valentine's Day, and Spider-Man describes himself as feeling blue. Although Gwen Stacy, Parker's first love, died a while ago, he still feels blue for her to this day. So Spider-Man recounts into a tape recorder how Gwen and he fell in love. So, okay, so it's a story about Peter, what would you call it? Mourning and kind of reflecting on her life and stuff like that. And then there's another one that is that's like it might be good. I don't know. It has a high rating on Amazon. The cover looks cool. There's another one that's about him visiting the Make-A-Wish kid. And it's basically, these are the two comics that are being smashed together into this one thing. What the fuck? Why am I getting added in a server right now? Oh god, I have to fucking pause the recording now. See what you done? It wasn't even anything. It was a stupid joke that someone added me in. Go to hell, dude. Anyway, yeah, so it's these two comics smashed together. I have no idea what the actual, like, how good they are or the content of them, but at least there's like a potential in those stories, right? I can see each of them working in a short run comic or maybe like a singular issue. Just like, here's a little Spider-Man story. And, but in this, it is so dragged out. And there's very little to talk about in terms of the actual contents of the film. Because it is mostly just the exact same idea being repeated every 10 seconds. Like, just like poorly edited. Just a poorly edited movie. Usually when you think of bad editing, you think about like, it's really messy, or it's really I don't know, something fast paced. Like, it's easy for a lot of people to pinpoint bad editing when it's like over edited, you know? Like, what was a classic example? Like recently that Freddie Mercury biopic, which I'm forgetting the name of, that won the award for Bohemian Rhapsody, that won the award for best editing. And then there was that pretty popular video about why the editing of this one scene is like fucking horrendous. People like can kind of pick that out, or like the original Suicide Squad. People can pick out like an over edited thing, but this is like under edited. It is like excessively it has so much fat to trim. It's like a fucking Wagyu beef. The actual contents of the story are so small. It should have been a 40-minute short where you have like one or two scenes setting up Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy's relationship and their relationship to the group. Then you have a scene of, you know, where the bad happens, or you can cut to like right after it. And then you have bits of everyone. You see everyone reacting. You get the different ways that they're reacting. You set up some little plot lines. But you mainly focus on the ways that Peter has been affected, and you have to actually like show that. In the movie, this is in Spider-Man Lotus, Peter's anguish is reflected in him having dreams where he sees Gwen in like a tunnel. And then she's like, "Why did you kill me, Peter?" And he's like, "Oh, no!" Or him having a flashback to fighting the Green Goblet. And the Green Goblin says, El Goblino Verde says, "You suck, Spider-Man. You killed your girlfriend." He's like, "No, I didn't." And it's just... you never really see the way that it's actually affected his life or his work or many of his relationships at all, except for like a couple scenes where he's just kind of an asshole to his friends. It's so shallow, right? Like, I can see the argument being, oh, it's an exploration of grief after a loss, but it's such a shallow, uninteresting exploration of those things that it's so low impact. It's like the TMNT. Cat directly compared this to the fucking Michael Bay Ninja Turtles in terms of like, this movie did not earn a big swelling, emotional, happy conclusion, you know? So he's like in this kid's room, right? And they start playing like a Spider-Man plug and play game, which, okay, I don't know how the concept of Spider-Man merchandise is handled in the comics universe. But in this film, just it's like, I haven't read enough Spider-Man comics to say, like, I think I vaguely remember, like, oh, there's like a comic based off of Spider-Man's adventures in the Marvel Comics universe. But like, just the amount of merchandise in this kid's room is like, it's a really bad idea to build a huge merchandising empire business around a vigilante who you literally cannot be associated with because you can't form a contract with him, and who could just, Spider-Man could like shoot someone on the street one day. He could be impersonated by a supervillain and shoot someone on the street, and then that's just what Spider-Man is now. And that's what the fucking kids' toys that you're selling are associated with. And then what, are you going to run a comic about that? Where it's like, actually, he was framed. That's distasteful. Imagine if O.J. Simpson put out a comic. Imagine if O.J. Simpson wrote a book about, you know, how he would have killed someone if he'd done it, if that was actually a thing that happened. That would have just been, like, extremely distasteful and honestly quite suspicious of the creator to do. So just like, not important to the film, just kind of a nitpicky observation, which is kind of, I don't know, I find it kind of funny. So they sit down and they're playing a Spider-Man plug and play game, which it's the one where Spider-Man's just doing like the Nicki Minaj anaconda pose on the controller, and he's just pointed squarely at your crotch. And they're playing, and this dumb little kid goes, Spider-Man, what happened to the girl on the bridge? And he just has like a boom, like a fucking PTSD critical hit. And he's like, I'm not the hero you think I am. The kid's like, no, you're Spider-Man though. He's like, I'm a piece of shit. I suck dick, dude. And not in a gay way, in a metaphorical way, because I'm bad. I'm a bad person. My God, it's so much. And then he like leaves out he's gonna leave out the front door. He walks out. He came in through the window, which is weird, right? It's like a weird thing to do, to like come in through a child's window. But he's gonna leave out the front door. And the mom is like, he's your his hero, and he just stop. He's such a little bitch, Spider-Man. And he's like, and he goes back up and he's like, you know what? I lied. Actually, I rule, and I'm a big superhero. Oh, and he shows him his face and his identity and all. He's like, I can trust it, which I'm sure is pulled from the comic or something like that. I don't know how much that original comic has in common with what's adapted in the movie. Maybe it works better as just a comic, like an individual comic story. But in the context of the film, it's like, it hurts. Well, it's hurt by the fact that it's such a weird feeling piece of. It's such a strangely structured movie. It has almost no arc. Like emotional arc. It does the bare minimum. It does the absolute bare minimum for like a standard kind of story, which is that it ends emotionally in a slightly different place than it begins, where now it's like hopeful and bright and happy and there's hope for the future kind of thing. And then, is he gonna show up? Is he gonna show up to the lunch that they're having with all the friends? He hears the siren in the background. I gotta go do my Spider-Man stuff. And it's just, man, what a weak film. Could have been condensed down. It could have been condensed down so much, both in the script and in the edit. There's a moment where, so this kid has like all of these newspaper clippings of Spider-Man stuff up on his wall. And I forget exactly what point in this, it's practically a storyline in and of itself, this one thing in the room, in this kid's room. But there's a moment where there's like a solid 30 seconds of just a montage of newspaper clippings, of just the camera going over various different newspaper clippings that he's got taped up to the wall. It goes on for so long. You could have covered this in 2 shots, and you chose like 30. It's crazy. And there's so much, just always emotional music, and it's just always hitting some kind of swell. It's trying to be like Requiem for a Dream, Requiem for a Spider. And it's just not selling it at all. Just like an extremely unenjoyable film. It's a film that's difficult to enjoy. It's not just unenjoyable. It's difficult to enjoy because it's so boring. I realize that I'm being a little harsh on something that's a fan film. But at the same time, if you're going to put something in front of my eyes, I can go off on this about fucking tiny little YouTube videos I watched. I don't care. One thing I was thinking about comparing this to Superman Solar, which by comparison is a significantly better movie and honestly probably covers Superman Solar, despite being like 30 minutes long, covers more ground than Spiderman Lotus does in 2 hours. And it doesn't even feel like really bloated. It just feels undeveloped. Yeah, it doesn't feel fast-paced. It feels a little undeveloped and unfocused. The acting in Lotus is not nearly as bad as in Superman Solar, but one thing that an observation I made between the two of them, and if anyone's out there and they are serial fan film enjoyers, I'd be really curious to know how accurate this observation is. It feels like between these two movies, these fan films have a lot of like, it's not that the writer is trying to tell a story, it's that they have scenes that they want to write. I want to have a scene where Superman fights a Brainiac, and I want to have a scene where Superman stops a tornado, and I want to have a scene where Superman is having his Ma Kent make his costume, and I want to have a scene where he talks a kid out of suicide, like in that comic, and I want to have, in my Spider-Man movie, I want to have a scene where he fights the Green Goblin, and I want to have a scene where he fights the Shocker, and I want to have a scene where there's like a really dramatic flashback, and I want to have a scene that's like out of this other comic that's really good. And it's like all of these very disparate ideas that don't really flow together, and the movie feels more like the plot of the film feels like a framing device to show these scenes that the author or the writer is too big of a nerd to let stay in the draft. You know? like so many things could have been cut out. So many things could have been left out, and the plot would have been exactly the same. Not enhanced, not hurt, exactly the same. Which makes the overall viewing experience enhanced. Just like, all these disconnected feeling scenes where nothing really builds. It's so strange. It's like Harry's doing drugs. When's the next time we see Harry? He's sad. And then what's the next time we see Harry? He's not doing drugs. I guess that was the plot line. When do we see MJ? She's sad in the graveyard with Peter. When's the next time we see her? She's going to a party an hour later in the movie, and she's sad. When's the last time we see MJ? She's at the new party, and she's not sad anymore. Just like... Yeah, I don't know how many more ways I can say it's just boring and undeveloped and too long. Yeah. The memes about like the main actor calling Miles Morales like the N-word or something, where they'll show like this new Spider-Verse, and they'll cut to like the promo, like the promo publicity photo of like the new Spider-Man guy, and it's like Miles, it's your greatest opponent. It's the most dangerous foe of all. Those are way funnier. Those are more entertaining than anything that's actually in the film. And that's on Persona. It's on Morgana from Person 5. It's bad. Don't watch it. Unless it's not even like funny bad. There's like weird lens flares in a lot of the film that make it feel, I don't know, it's too, it's such a weird stylistic choice, the lens flares. They're not like everywhere in the movie, but during certain scenes it's like, why is there a lens flare? Like a very clearly edited in lens flare. Excuse me. That does not have to be there, and it makes it feel like an action scene, or it doesn't. I think it was trying to be stylish and cinematic, but ooh, it's goofy. There's nothing to talk about beyond that. And I'm gonna wrap up by talking quickly about a little mobile game I've been playing. I do play some mobile games. I don't talk about them, but I do play them from Tim to Tim. And I have recently been heavily invested in, you're going to sigh when I say this, it's a game called, what do they call them? Oh, incremental games. That's what they are. It's clickers. It's a clicker game called Cell to Singularity. And it is, I just started it because I was like, it might be fun to just do a little mindless little clicker thing. And it is a weird game. It is kind of worth checking out just for how unexpected it is. So Cell to Singularity, it's a clicker game like Cookie Clicker, where the idea is that you have little points of currency and then you invest it to buy generators for that currency, and they generate so many per second, and then you buy more, and then you buy upgrades for those things, and then you go up and up and up in scale, and that's why they're called incremental games, because it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you're at some kind of goofy, universal-sized generator or whatever. Cell to Singularity is an incremental game that is based entirely around Earth history. I don't mean human history, I mean Earth history. So it begins with a little like molten forming planet, and then you tap to get the base currency, the basic currency, which is called entropy, for what is, we'll get to that. We'll get to the stuff later. So you you use entropy, you unlock your first generator eventually, which is it's like a nucleotide, something like that, some kind of like basic building block of genetic like genes and stuff like that. And then you get like and then your next tier for your generator, you can buy upgrades for that one. All these have like a bunch of just different branching upgrades. It's called the tech tree of life is what they call it. Then you go up to DNA, and then you go up to multi-celled organisms, and then you go up, single-celled organisms, and then you go up to like basic sea life, and then like coral, and then you go up to all these and you go up and up and up to mammals, and then you go from mammals to like apes, and then from apes to humans, and then from humans it branches off into like two different paths where they introduce a second currency, the ideas. And the ideas are a separate branch of the tree that it's like a little light bulb icon. And the ideas are a different clicker currency. And the idea tree, the ideas branch represents the progression of human civilization. So you go from like the Stone Age all the way up to like Stone Age through like the Age of Discovery through to the age of like the modern day, or what they call the emergent age, and then you go up into like speculative future sci-fi AI tech with like human machine singularity and cyborgs, and there's a branch at a point like before then where you go into like a Mars mission where you're like, it's like space colonization, and that's a separate thing, and that unlocks another side, that like a different branch off of the initial human generator, which is like space colonists. And there's a whole like little branch of space colonist like forms and technologies and stuff like that, and equipment and stuff, and then there's like all of these other branches that split off lower down the tree, where you have like different types of mammals, like ungulates and wolves, and then sea creatures. So you got like whales, and then you got and then like another side of the tree, it's like, hey, here's lizards, and then there's all these different kinds of there's all these different branching types, species of lizards that you can unlock that generate other currencies, and all the upgrades are always are for the generators are always these basically like little factoids about them, like, oh, this thing has this type of animal has this kind of scale or something, and that lets them do this in their environment. And it's always like a little fast fact about the animal or the concept. And then, okay, so here's where it gets like, it started really, so this all these like really branching paths happen way later. Much earlier than that, you will discover the other simulations. So the idea is that the main thing that you're playing with this whole tech tree of life is actually just it's a simulation within a simulation. That's like the framing device, is that this is like a computer program that's running a simulation of the Earth to see where human development might go in the future. And in order to understand stuff, it runs other simulations of other things. And there are two other kind of like main simulations, or like main quest simulations, I guess. One of them is the first one that you'll unlock probably very quickly, because it's right at the start, and it's just like in a slightly different direction. It goes like downwards instead of upwards, where all the other stuff on the tree is the portal to the Beyond simulation, which is the solar system. And from the solar system, you start out with the sun, and the sun generates a certain amount of like stardust, I think is the name of the currency. And then you unlock, you complete every single so the Beyond simulation has these basically like tiers, like levels of the simulation, and you have to complete all these different objectives to level up the simulation, at which point it will restart from the beginning, but all the generators will be reset, but the upgrades will stay the same. So you just have to buy the generators again, but they'll like generate things at faster speed, so you can get started faster and faster and faster and get up to where you were again. So it starts out with like the sun, and then it goes to, through the planets, Mercury, Venus, the Earth, Mars, so on and so on and so on, the asteroid belt, and all all of these have one or more like side upgrade things, which don't work like the upgrades from the main simulation, where you would just buy them with your like entropy points. No, you don't buy the beyond upgrades. You don't buy the upgrades there with just like the regular currency, the star bits. You have to earn these cards, and the cards are earned by like performing like little other things. Like you can do little missions where you can like basically like assign like an astronomy thing to like study a star, and then once that's done, after like the timer's over, you'll get like a bunch of rewards like currency and stuff, and these like cards. And once you have enough cards, you can level up that thing. And again, these are all like fun facts about like, hey, did you know that this planet has this gaseous atmosphere that lets it do this? And that's what all the upgrades are like called. Like it'll be like gaseous atmosphere or like gas giant or something like that. And you level them up with a different currency called dark matter, and dark matter is earned by completing objectives and also doing these like astronomy task things where you just like assign and you just gotta wait for a bit. And then fucking like you just keep going and going and going, and then that's like the like you finish all the things, and but like so you'll go up to like a certain number of planets or just things in the solar system, and then you're done and you can't go any further, so that you have to reset the simulation, and then after that you'll unlock the next one. So I'm up to like Saturn or something right now, Jupiter or Saturn, I forget. And that's the Beyond one. And I'm not a big fan of the Beyond one because the like the generators now are really, really fucking slow, and they cost a lot. It feels like a late game simulation, which is weird because it gives it to you very early. The other thing that you really gotta that I've discovered is now that I've kind of maxed out on. I've hit a wall. I've hit a hard wall on how much I can upgrade the tech tree of life in the main simulation, where I just cannot get beyond. I can't generate. I need to generate a decillion. I need to be generating at least a decillion entropy per second, but I have nowhere near that. I'm getting like maybe 10 nonillion, which is not enough for the amount that upgrades cost at that point in the game. So what I need to do is there's two things. Number one is that you can reset the main simulation, and when you reset the main simulation, you go to this little like simulation like matrix web, which is like its own separate tech tree that you can only spend upgrades on in between restarts of your like simulation level. So every time you restart the simulation, it gets faster. So this basically the speed of the simulation, it goes higher. So it's by whatever multiple, which is based off of a currency that you generate while you're in the main simulation called metabits. And metabits and you can't even pay for this shit. This is just like how the game works. There's like microtransactions for a little like, the only microtransaction I think you can get is like, there's these little cubes, which is a premium currency. And those can be spent on like a few of the currencies, but like it's not really worth it. And also sometimes you can use them to just skip watching an ad, but also you get like a lot of cubes just by playing the game. So I've never really felt any pressure to actually spend any money. It's just not really necessary. It feels like an add-on. It just feels like it's there because it's a free-to-play game. So this is just, while you're in the simulation, after you do your first restart, you unlock the metabits currency. And the metabits generate while you're in the main simulation based off of how much entropy you're generating per second. And once you restart the simulation, then you go to this little interim tree where you can upgrade like things like the speed of the simulation and like basically just these overarching upgrades for the main sim. So then you can go back into the main simulation, restart it now with with a faster speed, and you can also use metabits to unlock new branches of the tech tree, like felinids, like cat derived things, and then you and then you unlock way before this. Once you get to around like the lizards, you unlock the third main simulation thing, which is the Mesozoic Valley, and that's dinosaurs. So there's an entire simulation that's just dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs their upgrades work very similarly to the Beyond simulation, where it's like these little card things that you gotta collect. And it's basically just like plays like a much faster version of the Beyond simulation, so I prefer it a bit more. And did I mention that during all of this, I'm just been talking about the tech trees, but you have this little menu where you can switch views, so you can only upgrade and buy things from the tech tree, but there's all these different like 3D models to represent the different things that you've unlocked, like the different generators, which are all, like species of things and stuff like that. And that will be represented in different tabs until you get to like the main sort of like ecosystem tab. So you've got like a tiny little like, oh, here's like the cellular level, and then it'll show a bunch of just 3D models floating around equal to how many of those things that you've individual like generators you've bought. And then you get up to like the ecosystem level, and there's this big like 3D environment that you can kind of spin around in, and it's got a bunch of different animals, like all the different animals that you've unlocked. It has them just placed down doing like little idle animations. They don't really do anything. It's almost like a museum exhibit sort of thing, but with a little bit of animation. In the dinosaur one, they actually move around, and also there's a photo mode. And the photo mode, sometimes you can take photos of the dinosaurs, and sometimes you have to do that to complete an objective. So you complete these dinosaur objectives, and eventually, once you max it out, once you get all the objectives for a level of the simulation, you can it's not resetting, you fucking asteroid it. So every time you asteroid the dinosaurs, it resets their simulation, but you get new species to play with when you restart, and that it just scales up and up and up. And then things that you unlock in the dinosaur in the Mesozoic Valley increase speeds of things in the main simulation. And it just do you see how fucking crazy and weird this is? You see how strange this all is? I haven't even, there's like these there's like these events, right? These timed events that'll last like a week, and it'll be other random topics. So the last one that I did that I actually completed all the way through was the history of, it's like bees. It's bees and honey. And it's like, oh, it's a tech tree, and you start out with like flowers, and then that generates their own currency, and then pollen or whatever. I forget what it's called. And then you buy some bees, and the bees start generating things on a timer, and then you just scale up and up until there's like, oh, different kinds of bees, and you're learning about like the history of like how bees evolved and stuff like that, and how flowers adapted and things, and how they bees and flowers work together, and then just all this stuff. And you can unlock little badges that give you bonuses in the main simulations. And then, like, what's the other one? There was one on the history of money, going from, like, little shells up to, like, cryptocurrency. There's one on the James Webb Telescope. Did you know that there was a thing in the 1960s called the Velvet Scare? It was very similar to the Red Scare, but it happened mostly in government in the U.S., where there was it was basically a gay panic in the 60s that all these government officials could be homos. No, what? And apparently James Webb was under suspicion of being gay, so they were considering not allowing putting his name on it, because what if he's gay? We can't have our telescope named after a guy who sucks dick. We gotta name it after Nixon or someone. And then eventually his name got cleared, so obviously it's it's what it is, because like he wasn't gay, he was just suspected of being. He wasn't gay. He was just gay enough to be suspected of it. Um, not gay enough to be outed, just enough to be suspected. So that was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. Because that was one of the fucking upgrades. One of the upgrades on the fucking James Webb Telescope event tech tree was Velvet Scare, and then Name Cleared was the one after that. And you unlock that, and that gives you like a bonus to the efficiency of like your research. Like, what the fuck? The one that's ongoing right now is various mass extinction events. So it's like the history of mass extinctions on Earth, which is kind of interesting. I'm in the human age for that right now, or sorry, the age of mammals. Just a weird kind of engrossing game. I just kind of want to see what else it has for me. I'm at the point where I've kind of hard. I feel like I've seen most stuff in the game, but it is still like, I don't know. It's like an idle game. You come back to it every once in a while and see how much you generated in the background while you were gone. You buy some upgrades and stuff like that. Just like a little casual come back and do this. And sometimes I did install a click bot. I did install a click bot for this. It's a really good app. It's called it's on the Android. It's available for Android. What is it called? I believe it's called like OP Clicker. Yeah, OP Auto Clicker. And I got one of those set up with the multi-click mode, and I set down like 9 of them and just let it run. And my phone gets really hot when I do that. Yeah, just, I don't know. That's kind of what I've been playing recently. I haven't gotten a chance to... What do I want to play now? I want to play some stuff. What do I want to play? Oh, I guess I checked out the Guilty Gear Strive new patch in a live stream the other day, which is really fun. Thanks everyone for showing up. I was also playing, I guess, quick mention to HoloCure. I talked about it before on the podcast, but it's on Steam now, and it has a ton of new content. There's like an Animal Crossing mode that's really fun, with like a little rhythm-based... It's like a rhythm game for like a fishing... It's like a fishing mini game, but it's like a rhythm game to get fish. Where you can like buy, and then you can like sell the fish, and then you can buy furniture and decorate your house, and you can plant crops and sell the crops, and it's like really in depth. And while they were, so the reason that the game took a bit of a break from updates on the original itch.io version, and that was because they were working on getting it. They wanted to release it on Steam. But they had to get some legal stuff cleared with Cover, the company that owns HoloLive. From what it seems, that there wasn't any like issue. It's just legal stuff takes a while, and it's like a fan game, so it's probably not their number one priority. But it all worked out, and once the game eventually dropped, I guess in the meantime they were working on it because it has like, again, this entire Animal Crossing mode for like a Vampire Survivors game. And also like 20 new characters, like just an absurd amount of new content. There's like there's like a new sticker system where some enemies will like, they'll drop like a sticker and you can attach it to your main weapon, and it will like give different modifiers and stuff, and you can like level up the stickers. And then there's like just a bunch of other stuff that's been added into the game. It's very impressive. And again, it's entirely free. It's a completely free game. They don't even want to accept donations for it. So if you like Vampire Survivors and wanted something a little bit different, I think HoloCure is a really nice little spin on the, I guess, what are we calling it, a bullet heaven now, on that kind of a formula. Very good feeling game, beautiful game, wonderful sprite work. I believe it was created by the same person who did the sprites for River City Girls. So it's that, not the same art style, but the same craftsmanship. Yeah, and if you don't remember the last time I talked about it, yeah, it's just packed with references and love, and all the music is remixes of Hololive songs. If you played the original itch.io version, and I believe if you like left it in the default install folder, the Steam install will just read that and update you to have all of those, to have all the same progress. It's basically just, it ports your save file over, so you don't have to restart, which is really nice. Very much appreciated. It also meant that I got, like, the moment I booted it up, I got like 50 achievements. It just boing, 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 just over and over and over. But yeah, HoloCure on Steam. Go check it out. It's free. It makes it even cheaper than Vampire Survivors. Tons of content, especially if you like Hololive. Very fun. And even if you don't, I still think it's a really fun game. Very polished game for being so, I guess, early in development. Like, it's clearly got a ton of stuff to go. Obviously, there's like a fucking 1,000 HoloLive members that they still have to add and all that. I imagine some more, maybe some more probably some more mechanics and items and things like that. The game has a long ways to go, but extremely content complete. Like, they could have charged $10 for it, and it would have fit. Like, I wouldn't have minded. You know? You're getting a ludicrous amount of content for free. Yeah, hey, speaking of Vampire Survivors, I guess before I go, hasn't been an update on it. Hasn't been an update or any word on it for a while, and what I think it is that after the second DLC came out, Vampire Survivors has always had a bit of an issue with performance optimization, because they've acquired a lot of tech debt, which, if you're not familiar, is basically when you do something in programming kind of quick and dirty, and you're like, it's not perfect, but it works for what I need it to, and you can fix it later. Well, a lot of those fix it later, they add up, and it's called technical debt. And the game is a little bit weighed down by it, especially on weaker systems, just weaker computers and stuff like that. If you're playing it on like a basic laptop, once you get to the last couple minutes of a run, you're probably going to get some performance issues. You're going to get a frame rate hit. Even on my rig, which is like medium tier, I mean, I can run pretty good looking games at decent settings and all that for having a pretty old kind of low tier graphics card or mid tier graphics card. Which might be good to update sometime soon. Even for me, I'll get some performance hitches, and that's just a problem with the game more so than my hardware. The game should not be that difficult to run, but it is in the most extreme scenarios, which kind of happens sort of often because it's Vampire Survivors and it gets crazy with effects and enemies and just a million things on screen. So, Poncel or Poncel? I always pronounced it Poncel. Announced, he made like a post one time that really I think it got kickstarted by the fact that that they started development on the mobile ports. So the thing with the mobile port is, well, one, you got to port it to like iOS and Android. And in the process of doing that, hey, it's probably a good idea to redo a lot of stuff under the hood to better optimize it for a comparatively weaker system. You know? And I think that the mobile port probably kicked off a lot of the work that is eventually going to go into the main game. He's talked for a while about basically the giant engine update, which I don't believe has happened yet, and I'm pretty sure is going to be the next thing for the game. I imagine that in the flow of development, it's probably better to do all of your under the hood fixing and then make sure that like the whole game works and all the expansions and everything before you start development on a third expansion for, that would presumably be on an older build that is not, maybe not compatible with the new engine upgrade and all that. So, been a little quiet on the Western Front over there. But I imagine that there will be a bigger push. Probably like a big, I imagine, because it's like, it's not really, a big engine update. It's not very exciting for marketing. So I assume it'll be a little quiet for a bit. Maybe like assets could be getting ready and all that. But yeah, so I patiently await the next update to my beloved VS. Oh, there's an update. What the fuck? It came out 10 days ago. What? What the fuck? It came out 10 days. What? Well, son of a bitch. God damn it. Fucking 10 days ago. New engine and local co-op. How did I miss that? I saw the co-op option. I completely... No, because that's the only thing anyone talked about was the co-op. Oh, it's getting local co-op. That's fun. That's cool. Oh, yeah, also the new engine. Okay, yeah, so I assume that the fucking third DLC is going to be... it's going to be out sometime later. Sometime in the future. Oh, hey, you can still play on the old engine if you like. If you run it with a specific beta code. Ooh. New title screen? That's fun. Please note that... Yeah, cool, neat. I guess they're releasing like new title screens based off the DLC you got. That's cool. I like that. Yeah, cool. So, well, I patiently await the third DLC, I suppose. And with that, I'm going to have to draw this episode to a close. If you have been watching or listening this far, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. We got oh yeah, next thing is the comment thing. I say, what do I say? If you have a question, please leave it down in the comments below, or feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. New video in the works. It is a very complicated edit, so I'm taking a little more time just to, some videos are just like, you just kind of like, I know what to do for this, and you just kind of like slot stuff in and all that. This one might take a little bit longer, a teeny bit longer, just for the fact that I'm trying to take a little more time. Also, the research for this video was like fucking insane. It's the most research I've done for something in a while, and it went in a lot of weird directions. So, look forward to that. It'll be very different from a usual video, but that's coming out, I could see, within a week or two. The Patreon, the main channel, check out the side channel stuff, check out the clip shit, whatever. Anyway, bye.